Oh,
right.
there it goes. Stream is live.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone, and welcome to this. This is the Octopus podcast, the Octopus Movement podcast, and we are talking to founding members of the Octopus Movement here in the Octopus Movement podcast, where we meet and find out about all the unique brains and all the unique conversations that we have that span the entire circle of life and consciousness. So today I have with me Ed Shepherdson, and Ed Shepherdson is a human-centered navigational champion who is doing the changing the culture out in the world with a lot of human-centered, heart-centered action. So, Ed, welcome to the podcast. Thank you for being my guest.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. I'm looking
So,
forward to it.
yeah, it's really always fun to meet new Octopus Movement members because every time I learn something, and so that's just one of the most fun things. So, what brought you to the Octopus Movement?
Well, some of you might recognize the last name Shepherdson, as Daniel Shepherdson is my cousin, and I guess it was about 4 or 5 months ago. I saw Dan post something, and it had this Octopus Movement thing, and so I kind of caught my attention, and when I started to research it over kind of several months, I said this is something that I really can connect with, and I really understand. Well, I don't understand it all, but I understand the focus and the movement that's trying to happen. And today in our world, we need change, and we need change like this. And so as I thought about more and more, and I reached out to Dan, had a quick chat with Dan, and then I sent Perry a note, and we had a little talk, and here I am. So very, very excited to be here, and and I think it's an awesome function that's going on in the world, around the world, all kinds of various topics, which is just just fits into that kind of thinking outside of the box, the nonlinear thinking, and going out there and really looking at how we can make change.
Absolutely, and change is one of those things that humans fear because there's the unknown in change. But yet, if we're not changing, we're dead, right?
Exactly.
So what? And you call yourself, unless we just called you that, you call yourself an evangelist for this. So that's a strong word. So you have a really strong stance on the culture of change, and I take this as also sort of an adaptation and adaptability to the environment that we're in. So can you talk more about your title and what it really means?
Yeah. So, with the gray hair, you've been in industry for a long time, and you've seen lots of different business models and lots of different social models and people models and so forth. And you're right. One of the things that's constant is change, and the joke is, and taxes, and we go through this, but one of the things that I've seen throughout my whole career is really the value of people, and the value that people bring to almost every situation, whether it's personal or business. People are at the heartbeat of whatever is going on. And so from an organizational perspective, and that's where the ecosystem comes from. The ecosystem is a term for for the connections between things, whether it's nature, whether it's people, whether it's whatever, and it's there needs to be a balance for it to work. And when it doesn't work, it's very obvious, right? We run into pollution, we run into major project failures and all of these types of things. And so the kind of the ecosystem, evangelist part of it is really the helping people recognize the value of relationships, why relationships are important in any aspect, whether it's personal or business, and how to make sure that there's a culture of awareness. I also call it, in business, I talk a lot about, culture of accountability. All right, is we, and then sometimes we all do this, but we talk is, you probably heard the saying, talk is cheap, and it is. And a lot of people talk, but they don't follow it up with accountability. And so, in building ecosystems of humans and people in business, it's really creating a culture of accountability. And the way that I look at that is that, if you can see what I'm responsible for, and I can see what you're responsible for, we have an openness to have a dialogue about whether I'm delivering, whether you're delivering, and it creates that culture of asking questions, creating questions. And there's a way to do it. Obviously, it's not an aggressive mode. It's a respective mode. It's respecting people and process and all those types of things. But it's really about just bringing the awareness of what you're saying to what you're doing and to who you're serving, and who's serving you. And so that's kind of where I look at this all coming together.
Yeah, that I love what you're saying. The accountability and the awareness is something that takes us out of that blame mode too. We can, and I like to say that blame is blinding, because we don't take our own part in it. And when we don't blame and when we're accountable, we can connect, we can collaborate, we can, and that whole idea of ecosystem and culture is it's a natural system that we have, as opposed to I know better or I'm going to just do my own thing, right?
Yeah. And I look at it in two ways. Is in business there's a business system, and these are all the technical details of how I do A, B, and C, and then there's a human system that sits on top of that, and you have to make those two things, or you want to make those two things very cohesive and work together. And I think that's that openness, that transparency, that communication and visibility. One of the things that I really promote is visualize the relationships so that you can understand them. Sometimes people don't know that, hey, I'm accountable for this. Well, if I can visualize all the pieces and all of the areas that I'm accountable for, then I can have a conversation. I can address it. On the human side, I love the book, the Power of Vulnerability by Brene Brown. I don't know if anybody's read that book, but that's the equivalent side on the personal side is that transparency and vulnerability about how you interact with people is so important and not easy to do. So be right up front is, it sounds all great and it sounds easy. It's not. But really, when it comes down to it, is that transparency, that vulnerability, the vulnerability to be right, the vulnerability to be wrong, the vulnerability to to have people ask you questions and such is is a very important aspect of this. And so you can see how these two things are similar in the nature of that awareness and an accountability and bringing those two things together. So it's really the integration of both your personal and your business life together in a common way.
Yeah. When you're having a lot of audience thumbs up to the accountability and how it brings so much more to the relationship. When you're creating or working in this culture, you were saying about when things are out of balance, you really feel it. And I've been looking at balance as something that's a little bit that it's a point within chaos, but it's not. it's not a perfect thing, but it's also not a my way or the highway kind of thing.
Right.
And how do you approach the that point of balance and that creating accountability in a culture that you're brought into?
Yeah. I think leading by example, and that's sometimes that's a little bit of a cliche, but it's sometimes people come in and try to, into a new organization or into a new relationship or whatever, try to kind of solve all the problems at once. And really it's about the small wins that you start with. And so, working with, starting with your direct people that you interact with is, bring their awareness to the conversations that we need to have. And one of the things is ask lots of questions. One of the things that we have this confidence bias, right? That says, oh yeah, I know that. We listen to somebody and say, oh yeah, I know that. But when it comes down to actually executing on it, you really don't know it, right? And so it's really about kind of laying that on the table and saying, hey, I'm going to ask lots of questions. And what I want to do is I want you to respond with lots of questions as well, so that we understand each other. And when we get into alignment, right? Once we're into alignment, then we can get into agreement, right? And one of the things that happens is we often end the conversation with alignment. And alignment doesn't mean that we're agreed. Alignment just means that, hey, we've had the conversation that's common between us, but you're going to do A and I'm going to do B. And that's where we start to get into trouble. And so just by bringing people's awareness to how you align, how you get to agreement. Once you get to agreement, that's when the accountability starts to kick in. And you present it by example, is to say, now go and talk to the people that need to support you in this way. And so it's just like a spider, boom, it grows out as you start doing this. And I have a practice to visualize this. Is you sit down and you say, okay, here's the chaos that we're dealing with. Who's involved? Let's draw out who's involved, and let's have conversations. Let's get their perspectives. The other big equation to that is the perspectives, right? We our confidence bias, our business bias, whatever it is, often undermines the perspectives of other people. And so we really need to open up our mindset to allow, the perspectives to come in. And I remember one of my professors, he had this plastic apple. On one side, there was a worm hanging out, and the other side's nice and rosy and red. And he'd stand up and said, hey, would you eat this apple, right? And everybody goes, oh yeah, that looks really good. And he turns it around and he says, well, my perspective is this is a bad apple, right? And so just those little examples, right? If you don't understand somebody's perspective, how can you have a real conversation with them?
Right. Perspective is one of those things that brings us a belief, and our belief is our reality. So it's just it's people coming together with totally different realities, and when we have reality in our minds, we think we're totally right.
Yeah, exactly. And I am most of the time. No.
I mean, we're right to us, right?
Yeah.
And so that place of alignment that you're talking about is so interesting, because somebody is right and someone else is right, and it's hard to hear the other person until we actually just listen to the question and are able to answer in a way that is true to our truth. And then you can usually it's a statistic, but as far as I can tell, it's pretty much the way it is, that there's at least 10% right in what someone else says, even if you're in conflict with them. And that rightness is that their belief is matching your belief in some fundamental way. But until we listen to one another, we can't find that 10%.
Exactly. And having an inquisitive mind, to ask questions about alignment. And again, you kind of need to work on that alignment before you can get down to agreements and such. And so, I think that perspective and alignment, will create the conversation, allow you to have the conversation that opens up the doors for resolution, for agreement, and for the other things. And one of the other amazing things that I've seen through my career is how sticky this concept is. You can have one or two, real aggressive, person that you just has their own mind, and you start to create this conversation, within days or weeks, you're starting to see them relax, because now conversation is easy. I don't have to come in and talk to you, Lydia, and say, oh, geez, I'm afraid to have a conversation with you because it's going to turn into this big battle, versus, I can come and have any conversation. I can ask any question, and I'm accepted for the question. You're understanding my perspective. You're understanding, what's going on. And then you go on and have a good conversation, right? And people will start to feel relaxed, in those chaotic environments, because they know that they're not the sole source of everything, and listen to people around you, share your thoughts, share your ideas, and work on that. So it's something that filters through an organization, very quickly, and so again, from back to one of the early questions, where do you start and how do you get this, is just starting by example and working with a few people, and it'll start to grow across your organization.
Beautiful. When you talk about the alignment, and I think of this as like building a bridge, and when we're not aligned, or we're coming in expecting a conflict, it's like you're jumping into the tumultuous water that's between the two banks of a river. Mm-hmm. But when you're each building a bridge, then you're working toward a common goal, and just that is the beginning of that relaxation into, okay, I'm ready to actually have a constructive conversation now.
Yeah. And one of the things also kind of just around alignment is, alignment always doesn't have to necessarily end with agreement. Alignment is building one of the pillars in your bridge to get to the next pillar, right? And so it's not a start and end all the time, and it's about keeping the conversation going alive. And another great book to read on kind of keeping the conversation going is Finite and Infinite Games by Karst. It's a again, it talks about winning and losing, and is in those finite conversations, whereas you want the conversation to continue, you want the conversation to grow. And sometimes there are finite things where a decision needs to be made, and you work through that, but for the most part, it's the understanding or the awareness of the two different situations. I want this to continue. I want us to continue to collaborate. I want us to continue to grow and work together and bring our alignment closer and closer and closer to where we can come to an agreement. And that's the the infinite game that you want to play in organizations.
That infinite conversation and that infinite game is kind of the place where we get that comfort and that reliance, and it's where the life really is, right? Karen Ziegler was just saying that that there are a lot of degrees in between. You're talking about, it's not just reaching the goalposts, but there's, when you have the degrees in between, we can actually, that's, where that 10% is, and that 10% can grow, because you find that 10% is often what's crucial. It's why you're each who you are, each team is who they are, is that they want something good. They want something that works. They want something that's aligned with their values. And if your values are the same, you have a great start for an infinite game.
Yes. Yeah. And don't get me wrong. Like, the gap in polarities, some of them are unsolvable.
Sure.
Right. And some of them are solvable. Right. And and part of the respect, with inside the ecosystem is understanding, kind of when you have to draw the line and say that this is an unsolvable problem because of the gap between the parties, and it does happen, and so it's not always nirvana and everybody's working together as you want, but this is where those times where there's somebody has to stand up and say, okay, we're going to agree that we're not aligned on this, but here's what we're going to do. All right, can you stand behind that? And often you need more than one player in that case, because it's if it's just two people going head to head and never disagreeing, then obviously that's a tough one to solve.
Yeah.
But if you look in organizations, it's very rarely that there's only two people involved in major decisions or things that have major outcomes. And so, but again, I would come back to, even those polarities can be reduced by understanding the other person's perspective, acknowledging the other person's perspective, and that's probably the biggest catalyst for change, is acknowledging the other person's perspective and not just saying, no, you're wrong. It's okay. I understand that. Can you explain it more? Can you help me understand why my perspective is so misaligned to yours, right? And often through those conversations, you start to realize that you're actually really not that misaligned. You're just stubborn, and so it starts to break down those barriers. And again, by active listening, having those conversations, acknowledging and showing awareness and empathy to the other side's perspective, breaks down a lot of the barriers that are built up through time and through just people having been hit so many times that's the way they are. So
Right. That they are confrontational, or that this team is going to confront them head to head, whatever they ask for, if it's management versus a team or team versus team, that we're going to butt heads, like you're the classic cartoons where the rams are coming on the path, on the mountain pass, and it's very thin. And they're going to butt heads. And you don't have to butt heads. And we seem to have frozen for a moment here.
Yeah.
All right.
I think, are we okay?
I think we're back.
I
think we are. Well, there's a rift in the force. All right. I see you moving. Do you see me moving?
Nope.
We
can you hear me, Lydia?
A silent moment. We're going. Yes, I can hear you. So, the tech gods were having a little
I think
a finite game with us.
Sorry, folks. I'm not sure what's
All right. Well, we just lost Ed, and now we have Perry. Hi, Perry.
And now he's gone. I love chaos. I love things going unexpected. Where did Ed go? He was telling such a good story, and what happened, Lydia?
I didn't do it. I think it was, but
you didn't do it.
It's that infinite game. I thought it was a finite game, but it was an infinite game. We're still playing.
Well, the alignment is off now because Ed disappeared. Anyway, thank you, Ed, for joining us. What do you think, Lydia? We will just close this conversation, and because we have 5 more minutes on the clock, maybe Ed comes back. We can wait for a minute and just be quiet.
And I wonder if we have a link to connect with Ed that we can put up on the screen, so that people who want to work with him to change or improve their workplace culture can find him. There we go.
Here we go. Ed is coming back in the studio, but I can't see him yet.
Okay.
So I see that Ed entered the studio. His camera is not working yet. So maybe let's give him a minute, right?
All right.
So if you want to get in touch with Ed, Ed is fun. He's such a nice, pleasant, interesting human being. Find him on LinkedIn. Go to Ed Shepherdson and you will find him, connect with him, or check out the founding members page on the Octopus Movement. And there's a link to Ed's LinkedIn profile as well. How about that?
Very good.
Oh, he's back. I can see him. Let me bring him back to stage. Here you go.
Thank you, Perry. And here's Ed. I think that we have Ed back. And Ed, we just put up your LinkedIn profile so that people can connect with you. If you are able to, if you're able to hear me, and if not, it has been an amazing conversation about the culture. And until Ed comes back, or if he doesn't, I want to invite all of you to check out the more of the Octopus Movement podcasts, because the culture that we have created here in Octopus Movement is one that is making lots of bridges and also making lots of time together in which we are solving problems in a nonlinear way. And nonlinear is that whole conversation and the place in between. So, Ed, it has been a pleasure to talk to you, and I'm glad that you were able to come back. I can't hear you quite. You have your sound on?
I think the connection is not working.
Yeah.
He's frozen. We can't hear you. Thank you, Lydia. Thank you, Ed. Let's close the room. We have 1 more minute left, and right. And unfortunately, maybe he's back now, but it's going in and out. So Lydia, do your thing, and we will close the room. Unfortunately.
All right. Thank you all for being here, and remember that you can join the Octopus Movement as a founding member. The address for that is scrolling right along the bottom of the screen. I'm extremely happy to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you again on Friday for another episode of the Octopus Movement podcast.